Welcome to the Strive AI tutorial on activity predictions. So again, with our data science theme, we do look at each of your activities and we make some predictions that might be useful to you. Um, some of these are kind of experimental right now, and others are actually working pretty well, right? So let me give you, I'm on an activity here, and I'll just take you to the prediction screen just to kind of summarize them. So for every activity, we try to predict what type of activity that was, right? You might ask why we do this, but that helps us inform whether or not we would do other activities, right? If we think the activity wasn't what Strava says it was, then we're not going to do a bunch of other stuff to it, right? Because it might confuse you, right? So, the best example I could give of this is in the early days when I would, when I go play hockey, I record my heart rate, right? And I use a Garmin. Garmin obviously doesn't have the ability for me to say, hey, this is an ice skate. So I say it's an indoor bike. And so then when I'd upload it, if I forget to change it to an ice skate, it would come over as bike and then try to predict which bike it was. And which bike I was riding on an indoor ice skate doesn't make any sense, right? So first we look at the type, and it's pretty accurate. Again, we force, it doesn't know it until it's seen a bunch of examples, but it seems to be pretty accurate for most people. I haven't seen anybody have really bad experience with this yet, but it's always possible that it has a hard time. Sometimes it has trouble figuring out, is it, if I have like a 30-minute run versus maybe a 30-minute something else, right? Sometimes it doesn't like those, but so that's the only thing it's really used for, is controlling kind of what messaging we might send. So the next one is the bike. This one works very well for some people and not at all for others. It's the funniest thing. We do have a strategy to make it 100% accurate all the time, but that's not going to come until we have the Garmin Connect interface, where we can actually get at the raw file that comes off the device, where we can get data that'll tell us specifically which bike it is very easily. But for now, like in my case, it works extremely well. I have a road bike, a mountain bike, and a tri bike, and it can figure out almost without fail which one I'm riding. And so if I forget to set it, if I go ride my mountain bike and my road bike is a default bike, like it'll say, hey Mike, maybe you forgot to change that, right? That's what that's for. And then later on, we do want to know which bike you're on, because that's kind of important for some other things. Like um, the bike you're on has, it definitely sets up kind of like what your drag coefficients and things would be when we're trying to predict how you could do on a segment. So that's why we do want to make sure that variable's right, and why we did it, right? It wasn't just for fun, right? There is some reason we want to make sure it's accurate. Um, and then the three there you see, these are the ones that are more experimental, that we've implemented a couple different ways, and we're going to focus on this right after we get the segment performance stuff done. In fact, we're trying to use algorithms to kind of weed out bad examples of segment efforts. Either that somebody's weight is not right or their power meter was reading wrong. We kind of want to get those out of the training set because they throw off the algorithms, and that's what this basically does. So the usefulness for this will be: is your heart rate reading high because your battery's low in your heart rate strap, or is your power reading off because you haven't calibrated your power meter? It's cold outside, which several athletes have seen recently. That's what's been happening. So, we'll be able to. The intent is, once this is working fairly well, then we will basically automatically flag the activity and say, it looks like you might have had an anomaly, and then you can say, yeah, I did, or no, I didn't. And the only thing really it will do if you flag it is it just won't be included in your peak thresholds or on the segment efforts, right? Because maybe it was collected with bad data. So that's basically what those are. And so, we used to look at what your cover art was, but, we stopped doing that, right? Because it really doesn't have anything to do with human performance, right? It was just us learning how to use this one tool. So anyway, thanks for listening.